It's a boy. So look, basically, I didn't give my take on the long nights, but I felt that it was apt for me to get a review on that because I just had to because it's one of the most. I think it's one of the most controversial, biggest, most talked about episodes, I think, in Game of Thrones history, to the same level as the Red Wedding and so on and so forth. And I thought, I had to let this thing really sink in before I gave a full-on assessment. This episode, I think, represents the very best and the very worst of this show. It represents what this show does best, which is why I'm still watching it, and it represents what this show does horribly. But let's just start with the good and we'll go with the bad. The director, I believe his first name is Miguel Bisapulchuk or something, but his first name is Miguel. The directing in this episode was outstanding. Now, people would say it was a bit dark, could have been a little better, but I think that goes to the cinematographer because he's the guy that takes care of the visuals and everything. And look, but as far as directing goes, the kind of camera work that was used both in interiors and exteriors, the stories that were told war-wise, battle-wise, from the Dothraki to the Unsullied to the Northerners, and how you saw Arya Stark's story within the interiors, which was a lot more subtle and much more about espionage. How you saw Jon Snow come down against the Night King fighting on the ground, how you saw the Night King fighting Jon Snow and Daenerys with the dragons in the air, the dragon warfare in Ariel. For me, the craziest part of the whole episode was how Jon Snow was trying to pretty much evade the advances of the dragon that was breathing blue fire towards him. I just thought that, like, this is insane. It is absolutely flipping insane. So it was crazy to watch, and literally I was hooked. And I wasn't hooked because I cared about the characters, because most of the characters I like have already been clipped. Most of the characters I've liked have already been gone. So I wasn't gripped based on the characters. I was gripped based on just how well, and not just how sharp and how dynamic the directing was, because some of the stuff that I've seen, especially with how well the dragons were done, I've never seen in any film or TV before, so it was insane. So with that being said, I mean, yeah, it's one of the craziest pieces of directing for a battle scene that I've ever seen, 100%. So the director deserves all the praise in the world. How is it that, based on everything that we know about Game of Thrones, of how nobody is safe, no real true main characters actually died in that? The ones that died were pretty much the side characters who are not really well known, as in talking about people like Jaime, like Brienne, like, how did they survive that? How? So that for me, I just thought like was based on just how desperate this situation was. I was like, what? I was always worried that this was episode 3. No, there were 3 more episodes to come. It always had me worried. So when we eventually saw the Night King is a loser. Let's just call it right. The Night King is a loser, ultimately a loser. Now, I believed how the Night King was being portrayed from the very first episode. This is the enemy. This is the guy that people should fear. And let me tell you something about subverting expectations. Story-wise, with writing, you have to have a balance. If all you're doing is subverting expectations and just going against everything, you lose people. What's the art of telling a great story is a mixture of subverting expectations and doing what we expect to happen. Jon Snow has to fight the Night King. Jon Snow has to slay the Night King. That's what has to happen. But the key thing is, even if we know what has to happen, it is how well you execute it that gives you the money, that makes it cool. Because if you don't execute it well, then it's irrelevant. So you don't have to subvert our expectations all the time. There is no argument anybody can give me to tell me that Arya Stark should have been the one to slay the Night King. I'm sorry, there isn't. Because the fact that it happened where there was hardly any connection to her doing it to the Night King Didn't make any sense. But my issue with that is, this is the big threat. This is the big villainous threat. This is something that has been hovering over these people through the end from the very first episode. As people have said online, the first episode is called Winter is Coming. The first thing I believe you see is a White Walker. So for it to end like this in such a cheap way, so what is like, oh, well, you know, you were pumping it up and this is just subverting expectations, this is how things happen. I'm like, that's not how you tell a compelling story. I'm sorry. A company, like, you can't keep trying to surprise us all the time. You can't, because eventually the surprise loses its luster, it loses its effect. At first, when you first surprise, you're like, oh, wow, damn. But if you keep surprising us and just say, what is the wildest, most left field thing that we could do, the more times you do it, the more the audience will be like, oh, okay, wow, I didn't see that coming, but who cares? It's not effective. It's not engaging. It doesn't pack the real punch for the story. So once I just saw her do that, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm surprised that Arya did that, but I'm like, okay, she did a knife trick. And for the Night King, you're a loser. For you to fall for a simple Hollywood for you to fall for a simple Hollywood knife trick like that, you are a brick, a class A brick. You're a loser. You're a loser. So, and I just said to myself that, what was the point on Jon Snow? What's your point? Because, you see, we can have all the surprises and subverting expectations, but at the very heart, surely we have to have the hero's journey, the hero versus the enemy. Because if you don't have that foundational principle within all of your surprises and all of your zigzags to make the stories a bit interesting, so don't go into tropes, then, you know, you lose the interest and the engagement of the audience. And that is just what happened to me. You lost the engagement of me, because it's like, Jon Snow, what? Of what consequence are you? And I just think, for me right now, with these episodes to come, it's like, it is an anticlimax, because there is no more, there is not a greater, more fearsome threat than the Night Walkers. There isn't one. And for a threat so great that has been preached about for so many years, they actually came out pretty well. They actually came out pretty well for this hugely hamped up threat. This should have been the final episode. Really, forget about episode 5. This thing facing up against the Night Walker should have been the final episode, and should have been Jon Snow up against this Night King, and it should have really been a case where these White Walkers are coming to King's Landing, and that was their last stand at King's Landing. That's what should have happened. That's how it should go, and it's how you execute it. But I digress. It is what it is. But I mean, Arya Stark, nah, sorry, nah.